Good. So thank you for coming to this session. My name is Austin, and I am very delighted to be facilitating this webinar. I'm joined together today by two other speakers, Mark King and also Marina Robinson. I'll let them do a bit of a short introduction before we um, proceed with the webinar today. So, Mark, take it away.
Shall I go first? Okay, thank you, Austin, for hosting this. And hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. So I'm Mark. I am the founder of a company called The Next Revolution. So we provide coaching and training for young professionals in the workplace, essentially. But what we also do is we provide actionable insights to their employers through the coaching program. So it's kind of a two-way thing. Helping companies develop their pipeline of future leaders.
Thank you very much, Mark. Marina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Marina Harrison. I'm a career leadership and workplace relationships coach. I spent over 25 years working with people in psychology, business, specifically in HR. I am a former vice president for human resources, so conflict at work is quite a known subject for me, topic for me, and I'm happy to be here with my colleagues and with you, and hope we will bring a lot of views on conflict at work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina, and also Mark. Now, today, of course, this topic is very, very apt, I think, at this present moment, where we're seeing more and more Gen Zs are going to the workplace. So today we're going to tackle this topic, how to handle conflict at work. Now, we are going to be focused because we're going to spend about 30 minutes. So time is of essence, but we're going to focus on three areas. One would be the first one. What is workplace conflict and what causes it? The second part, we're going to focus on how does one manage conflict. And thirdly, what can one talk to when you are in a situation where you're facing conflict within the workplace. So to kind of really start off this webinar, we were thinking it would be nice to actually have a perhaps a case study. So moving forward to the next slide, just imagine we're going to meet Jordan. Now, Jordan is a 24-year-old Gen Z employee joining an organization, his first graduate role. And he's been tasked to lead a social media strategy. So he was very happy. He went to a meeting with the team and to share his ideas about what the organization can do in terms of this new strategy. The senior colleague within the meeting itself was very dismissive, and publicly say that, well, Jordan, your strategy is too risky, and interrupted Jordan every time Jordan was trying to respond. After this happened, of course, the whole team was there. They all saw that. There was nothing happen in terms of a debrief. There was no conversation with regards to this particular senior colleague to Jordan. And the tension is never named. Obviously, we see the impact there. Jordan starts dreading going to meetings, especially when this senior colleague is going to be there. He started to feel his confidence has dropped and his performance also suffer. So this is a scenario that we're going to paint for you guys as we start talking about this throughout the webinar. Before we go there, I want you guys to think about, have you seen or experienced something like this? So use this as a reflection as we move on to the next slide. So I'm going to get Marina to start off the next few slides for us. Marina.
Thank you. Thank you, Austin, for such a good example of conflict at work. It's quite a classical one. So let's start with the definition of conflict. So what conflict actually is? Conflict is a clash between different expectations, views, values, or goals. And when this tension affects your behavior, emotions, or productivity, we can say conflict is present. So this is actually what we could see in Jordan's situation, when they have different views on strategy, on feedback, on something else, and the conflict is vivid. Conflict is not always loud arguments. In many cases, it's very quiet, quietly developing, and ends with dismissal. But let us look at types of conflict we can face, because it's important for us to identify what we are facing to properly address it. On the next slide, we could see 3 types of conflict. First type is task conflict. This is actually when people disagree on about work itself. For example, how to create the strategy, or what is strategy, or what their goals are, or anything else. Second type of conflict is relationship conflict. This is the situation when someone attacked personally, disrespectfully. And finally, we can face process conflict when people have different understanding of roles, responsibilities, or decision-making process. And the conflict is developing. It starts with mild irritation, and it's important to identify first signs. Listen your emotions. Emotions are our helpers. And it can finish with open clash or withdrawal. So someone could go for sick leave or leave the company, or it could be a formal complaint. And in the current reality, where we have a new generation at work, and we have different environment with a lot of technology, we may say there are 4 main causes of conflict at the moment. So on the next slide, you could see 4 of them. The first one is communication. We have a lot of different channels of communication: WhatsApp, emails, meetings, and it's very easy for information to be lost or misunderstood. Another cause is role ambiguity. People may not have the same view on roles, responsibilities, decision-making process, especially in such modern teams like agile teams, for example. The third cause is perceived unfairness. We could say that some work is invisible, for example, note-taking, and some work is visible, for example, leading a project. And the new generation, they would like to be given fair jobs, fair recognition, be rewarded fairly. The fourth reason is value clashes. New generation comes with clear understanding what they want to have regarding flexibility at work, or diversity and the inclusivity, or well-being processes. And unfortunately, not all employers are ready to meet their expectations. And one more important thing which is still at work is power dynamic. We all understand that employees are dependent on their managers in some situations, like referrals or career development. and such dependency may keep them stay silent, which is not good for conflict situation, because as soon you address conflict, it's better for you for the situation development. So this is in general all about conflict and what causes it at the moment.
Thank you very much, Marina. And I think you have given us a very good overview of what conflict can look like in a workplace. Next, I think it's also important now that we know what it can look like, how then can we manage conflict? So I'm going to invite Mark to share with us a little bit more on the next few slides.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. Yeah, so just I think this section is really about the fact that conflict management is actually a learnable skill. There are approaches that exist to help you navigate it with confidence. So this is really what we're going to cover now. So the first part, if we move on to the next slide, there's conflict styles. There's actually a framework called TKI, Thomas Kilmann Conflict Mode Instrument. So I will briefly go into that. There's 5 conflict styles, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So you've got compete, collaborate, compromise, avoid, and accommodate. So those are the 5 conflict styles. And with those different styles, there is different levels of assertiveness and cooperation. And as Marina already touched on, Gen Z may seek to avoid conflict because they're new in the workplace, there's different power dynamics, and they might use digital tools rather than confronting something directly. So they will go for avoidance and accommodation rather than confronting the situation, particularly if they don't feel psychologically safe at work. So this is really important. They want to collaborate, but that doesn't always transpire. So that's a quick introduction to conflict styles. I don't think we have a slide on this specifically, but I think it's really important to talk about triggers. What triggers us in terms of our reaction and response. So that's really talking about our biology. You've probably all heard of fight, fight, flight, and freeze. Probably heard that terminology. And there's actually a part of our brain called the amygdala, which is a very ancient part of our limbic brain, which hasn't really evolved for centuries. And it works well in the animal kingdom when an animal faces a threat like a predator. They will either attack it, they will run away from it, or they will make a decision maybe even to freeze. Like if a snake is attacking you, it senses movement. So freezing is a good strategy there. But unfortunately, these reactions don't serve us that well in the workplace. That's our physiological reaction, which we don't necessarily have a lot of control over that, and we can recognize those signs. So if we are if we're being triggered, and Marina shared the different levels with us, and we will each have different trigger points, but we will recognize it in the fact that we will feel stress hormones like adrenaline, and our heart rate goes up, our palms sweat, and it clouds our thinking. That's the really important thing to say. When we get into a conflict situation, we can't always think clearly. And the learned skill really is not to react immediately, is to actually recognize that if it feels uncomfortable, something's probably not right, and just to pause and reflect is probably the best thing to do. So it's not healthy to lash out. I know that is a triggered response. That is a response, and a lot of people do it. I think should also point out it's not healthy to bottle those feelings up as well. So we need to find a way to confront that situation certainly in the case of Jordan, I've been in situations like that would have definitely triggered me. I think he was treated quite disrespectfully by the senior colleague. And the fact that no one else spoke up is probably made him feel a lot worse, and probably felt quite isolated. So it feels like one of those things that definitely should be confronted. So let's just elaborate on a structure for speaking up clearly. So this is the, that's the right slide, I think, the DESC. And this is what you can do when you're preparing. So it's important that, the first thing to say is, when do you initiate it? You could potentially at the time say, I don't think this is appropriate or comfortable to be, but obviously you couldn't get a word in. So in his case, he just had to wait until the meeting had finished and then arrange to speak to the senior colleague, arrange an appointment and explain what he's going to talk about. I think that's really important. Explain that it's about the situation and he wants to talk it through with him, and find a quiet, neutral place to do it, potentially with a witness, but if he doesn't feel comfortable or feels overpowered in the relationship, but ideally one-to-one to start with until it escalates. So quickly on the DSC, so describe what happened, very much the fact, as you saw it. The E is express, so it's important to talk about how it made you feel, undermined, etc. And then specify. So specify is, well, what would you like to happen next time? How can we work better together that we get the most out of this this relationship? And then the consequence. Well, by doing this, this is how it will then improve. So it's a challenging situation, particularly for a young person confronting a senior colleague. And I think an important thing to take into that that meeting, that discussion, is just perspective and empathy. So put yourself in their shoes, use active listening, stay calm, acknowledge any feedback. And I always say it's like a sandwich. You start on a positive tone, start with some gratitude. Thank you for taking the time to meet me and talk about this. Obviously, it's important to you. Then you sort of frame the bit that you'd like to change in a positive way, but that's where obviously the negative part comes, and then try and finish on a positive note as well. And then I think in the next section we'll talk about, well, if that doesn't, if it's not resolved there, then obviously there's other things we can do to escalate the situation. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Mark, for providing us now a model or structure for people who are facing conflict in the workplace. To reiterate what we were talking about, it was the describe, express, specify, and the consequences of the experiences are. Now we're going to kind of perhaps wrap it up a little bit more on, we have known actually earlier on what conflict looks like, what we can do, and what Gen Zs usually deal with it in their own way. A model that they can record down the incident so that they can have a conversation with the person involved. If this model that we were talking about, DSC, or having a conversation did not work, who else then can we approach it? What else can you do if, let's say, you're facing a similar situation in terms of conflict? So I think this is where I'm going to invite both Marina and Mark to come back again and share a little bit more from your experience, and also from what you guys have done in your own capacity in an organization. What else? What other advice would you give our young people who are actually coming to the workforce to work if they face something like a conflict in the workplace? Could I start with Marina first?
Yes, of course, thank you. It's a very important topic, of course. We are here not to discuss theory, but discuss what we can do, how to handle the situation, and how important it is, because for Generation Z is actually more common to freeze in conflict situations. And This is, for example, when they switch off cameras or stay silent, not talking during meetings. These are examples of freezing. Though they would like to collaborate, and I think we could help each other because we have the same goal, and our goal is to work together and to deliver what we'd like to deliver. So I could say that there are two main like sources of help you can ask for. One is informal and another one is formal. As I spend a lot of time in business, I could say that formal, of course, when we talk about formal, we talk about your manager, your HR department, because HR department is usually responsible for different policies, which include conflict. There is also employee assistant program, which is available in different areas. You can search in your area. They usually provide a helpline, which is sometimes open 24 hours, and you can connect, you can call, and also some other services are available, like free of charge consultations, legal advice, or anything else. Among informal sources, I would mention trusted colleague or friend, your mentor, who could provide like an alternative view on the situation, or any community you belong to, for example, university community or any professional community, but people who you trust and who could see from outside of box, because you are inside a box. And sometimes for young people, it's even difficult to identify, was it the feedback or is conflict already? So that's why just sharing how you feel and what happened is very important first step you can do.
Good. Thank you very much. Mark, do you have anything to add on to what Marina has just shared?
Not a lot, because that was pretty comprehensive. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with when you talked about trust. Talking to someone that you trust is really, really important. So it could be your line manager if you've got a good level of trust, and obviously the conflict wasn't with your line manager. That would be a really great source. But sadly, in the workplace today, there isn't always good level of trust between line managers and their people. So yeah, obviously Marina talked about the escalation route, the EAP, etc., within the organization. But a really good source is social support network, which is a really good source of talking to people within your social support network, even when you're not in a conflict situation, is a great source of well-being. So it could be a colleague at work, or it could be someone completely outside who will have a neutral third-party view of the situation. They'll be completely unbiased, and obviously, if you trust that person, then you're going to have a really fruitful conversation. So I think that's a really valuable starting point. I think just in terms of clearly, if the conflict goes on and escalates, it can have serious health consequences. Like stress hormones can be harmful to us. So it's really important that we take steps to address it, either actually going through the process, but also there's things we can do for our well-being, like going out in nature, exercising, because stress is really unhealthy. And of course, if it gets too bad, clearly we may need to see a GP or a counsellor or something more, or a therapist, if it gets too overpowering.
Yes, I mean, it's true, isn't it? When the impact of such experience can go beyond just the experience itself. It could manifest, as Mark, you were saying, stress and also physical health there.
And just
I'm very mindful. Sorry.
Sorry, I had
Go on.
one
Sorry,
really quick
Mark.
point I wanted to make, and I forgot to say it in the first part, was just I think there's quite a difference between people who are introverted and people who are extroverted in terms of how they handle these situations. Because obviously, someone who's introverted, like myself, I will take longer to process. And I think the advice is probably leave it at least 24 hours before acting on it, because your thoughts will settle and you might have a different perspective 24 hours later. But I wouldn't leave it more than 72 hours, because then it's kind of, the incident has passed and maybe the person has assumed that there wasn't any offense taken. So it's striking that right balance. But I think recognizing the difference between different personalities, and people who are introverted will probably take longer to process something and may not react straight away, but typically will feel uncomfortable, but won't necessarily know straight away why. It'll gradually process and realize that it wasn't right. But if it doesn't feel right, then let's listen to those warning signs that we're getting.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, that kind of leads me to showing the last slide. As we promised, we want to do this in 30 minutes. So I'm very clocking my time here. So we're going to leave you all with this last slide. So when you notice tension next time, name it. So this is a form of conflict, not just me being too sensitive. So using the DSC, you could actually record down. And it's what Mark was saying. Look at it in 24 hours, maybe your perspective will change. It's a different experience altogether. So, but writing it down is actually useful for you to reflect. Second, notice the early signs. Anxiety before meetings, replaying interactions, or you're going quiet because of your past experience in meetings when you have been snubbed or you have been called out by a senior person or even a colleague. Thirdly, choose one action. A conversation, documenting patterns, or reaching out for support is very, very important. I want to leave you guys with a last question here. What is one thing you would do differently next time you notice conflict at work? It could be something that happens to you, or maybe a colleague that you have. So something to reflect. Earlier on, I didn't mention that if you guys have any question, please put it in the chat. But I'm very mindful that we still have about a minute or two. So we're happy to take any questions if you have. If you don't, then we are happy to also end this session.
Well, I think we've got 10 minutes, haven't we? We've allowed 10 minutes for questions.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are happy to stay to about 1:10, we were happy to actually take some questions from those of you who are here today. So if you want to put it in the chat, that'd be great. Then we could actually look at it. I guess maybe our attendees are pondering what are the questions they can actually ask. Perhaps I could actually ask a couple questions to our panelists, both Marina and Mark. Thinking back about Jordan's situation, right? What type of conflict was being experienced, and what do you think was the underlying causes?
I could say that we, for me, there are three types of conflicts there. It's clearly different view on what should be done about this strategy. Then it's a personal offense. Jordan is personally attacked. And I think processes are not clear for everyone who participated in the meeting, because people didn't provide any support, any talk to Jordan. So all three type of conflicts are there, and the reasons could be different. The clear reason is different view of different generations. Also no clarity on the process itself. So could be a lot of other reasons. It's important to talk to Jordan and to his senior colleague to identify and then address it properly.
To have that conversation, frank conversation itself. Helen's hand is up. I also saw your question there, Helen. Do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to ask the question?
Yeah, I might ask it just so I can Sorry, I've turned my camera off because there's terrible light
No
here.
worries.
So I come across this a lot. And what often happens is there's a conflict situation and people form a narrative in their head. So an action happens, words, behaviors. Immediately, people create a narrative in their head. And Austin, your narrative may be different from my narrative. And that narrative
Yep.
then drives the emotions. What
Yes.
advice do you have for clients when they realize the narrative between the two parties is very different?
Mm. Mark, Marina, you guys want to pick it up or?
I can have a go at it to start with, and I sort of welcome your contributions as well. I mean, I think it goes back to the framework really. Is if we do that preparation, if we describe in our words what's happened, without the emotion in it, if we just, and yes, the narrative may be affected by our own biases, so I think we have to look at it really objectively as possible. And I think that's again where the peer support comes in. If we can talk it through with someone else, someone who's in the room ideally, but you may not get support, particularly in this case where they're all silent. But if we can talk it through to an observer, they may reflect back and give us a different perspective. So, and that's actually where having a coach or a mentor can be really valuable, because a coach is very good at that sort of active listening, reflection and questioning. So a coach and mentor can actually be really valuable in situations like that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Helen, it's really
Marina, do
a
you have anything
great
to add on? Yes.
observation. Great observation, really. And yeah, it's usually what's happening when people react on their interpretation, not on the facts. And that's why I think DESC model or any other tool where you can separate facts from your feelings and your interpretation could be also a good thing to apply.
Thank you.
So we kind of advocate more on the evidence gathering, and then to check in on our own perspective of the experience. And as what Mark said, perhaps talk it to someone else who's also in a meeting or in a situation itself, just to validate your own evidence, and then having that conversation subsequently with the individual, with facts rather than emotions. That would be a best way to de-escalate any further conflict in the situation itself. Brilliant. I'm just wondering, are there any other questions from Kim or Sveshta that you would like to ask both Mark and Marina?
Hey, no questions from me. Just wanted to thank you guys for putting together this wonderful session. It's really useful to take some time out of our routine and actually sit and like think about it. And this framework is really, really helpful. Mark, thank you for sharing the framework as well. I feel that I'm taking away some really useful practical stuff. And Marina, as you mentioned, like we don't want to sit and listen to theories here. I think few of us are quite experienced in that sense, but just some toolkits to add to our tool bag is always helpful. So thank you all for doing this.
Thank you very much, Vrishta. I know no one else will have any question. I perhaps want to ask one last question, if I may. For someone who is currently in a conflict situation at work, but have not spoken about it at the moment, what would you recommend in terms of a first step for them to take? And who should they be talking or reaching out to?
Who's that for?
I would really
Either one of you?
recommend,
Yeah.
Go on, Marina.
yeah, just to talk to someone you trust, just to get alternative perspective, and communication is really important, the first step to start trying to understand what happened and what to do next.
Okay. Mark, do you have anything to add on to what Marina said?
No, I think we've covered it quite a bit. I think trust, again, that's such a key word. Mentioned it twice, but if you don't trust someone, it's not going to be a good conversation. So whoever it is, if it's your line manager, great. It might have to be someone, a colleague, someone who was present, or it might just have to be someone outside. It's just, but having the trust is really, really important. And that's, you know,
Good.
psychological safety. We talk about that, don't we? That's really important.
Yes, it is. It's very important when we are in a situation like that, or you know someone who's in this situation like that. Talking to the right person, gaining that trust to share the experience is very important. With that, I'd like to say thank you to both Mark and Marina for speaking to us today on this important but quite difficult topic to talk about. For those of you who are here, if you'd like to reach out to both Mark or Marina, they are on LinkedIn and they are both also from the Next Revolution. So you can check them out on the LinkedIn, their LinkedIn page. If anybody want to approach me, I'm also on LinkedIn, so you can actually catch all of us on our LinkedIn pages. So I would like to say thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us, and I hope we will have another great session again. Thank you very much,
Should
guys.
we,
Thank
just
you.
a very quick
Thank you.
one,
Thank you.
are we, should we share the slides and the recording? Is that, would people like that?
Yeah, I think we can do, of course.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
we
yeah,
can
we'll
do
share,
that.
we've got
Yeah.
your email addresses, so we can
Yeah.
share that.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you very
Yes, we will
much.
go and do that.
Thank you.
See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you for coming.
Bye.